Welcome back to another speaker's tip. I'm continuing on speaker's tips on how to put humor into your speeches. This is something I get a lot of questions on. And as you develop as a speaker, you want to be able to look at your speech and figure out how could I take that phrase and make it humorous, or how can I structure my speech? Where are the opportunities to actually insert humor? And as I've said earlier, one of the tricky parts about humor is when you put humor in a speech, you're putting something into the speech that is a surprise. And that's what makes it funny. It's not expected. And that's what gets the audience from that's the reaction from the audience. That's why, as an example, when you're telling a joke, the punchline works because the punchline is a surprise compared to the setup and the joke. So today I want to talk about how to set up a little pattern and then put a surprise at the end. And this is a technique for humor I call the triad. Now, I did an earlier video on using triads, and triads are a very good way to set a scene or explain what's going on. It's an example of 3. Now, in my world champion speech, and this is in my video, I set an example of 3, and I said, I had a job I didn't like, I hadn't had a date in 3 years, and I had a couple of roommates named Mom and Dad. Okay, now that sets up what's going on. Now that was also got a great laugh because the third component was a surprise. The third component looked like it was going in a straight line, but when I gave the third, it had a twist to it all of a sudden, and the third didn't actually align with the first. I had a job I didn't like, I hadn't had a date in 3 years, and I had a couple of roommates. If you're thinking, what's going on with my roommates? No, I'm still living at home. Okay, it was the way to say that. And also, I use that. That's a technique inside the triad that we talked about earlier, which is inverting the obvious. Okay, so you don't say the obvious. And I was living at home with my parents. You said I had a couple of roommates named Mom and Dad, and that's a way to invert that. That's another technique in that within the triad. But I want to go over the triad's a very, very easy way to put humor into your speech. And you can come up with it all the time with different examples you're using, because what you do is you set a pattern with 1 and 2, and 3 breaks the pattern. That's the simplicity of it. I have some examples of it. I want to share with you. Just recently, I was coaching somebody, and she was talking about who inspired her, and she was talking about the Dalai Lama and Sister Teresa. And then she was going on with these great people, and she wanted to put more humor in her speech. So I said, okay, let's look at this. So we set up a triad with, she said, the Dalai Lama inspires me with wisdom. That's what it was. Dalai Lama inspires me with wisdom. Sister Teresa inspires me with love. Betty Boop inspires me that I can be an international sex symbol. Okay, now the Dalai Lama, Sister Teresa, Betty Boop. In case you don't know who Betty Boop is, she's a cartoon character. Okay, she was the first cartoon character sex symbol. If you didn't know that. Anyway, so it broke the pattern, and we'll see how that works in her competition that she's going into, from that standpoint. But it breaks it up a little bit. So I have some examples. I went through, I don't know, 24 world champion speeches to find a couple classic uses of triads. So let me share the screen with you, show you some usages of triads here. First person is Mark Hunter. Mark Hunter is the 2009 world champion of public speaking. Now, earlier in this speech, Mark was describing, well, I'll watch it and then I'll fill it in. So let's watch what he says.
By being the water. You see, water embraces everything completely. It doesn't differentiate young from old, black from white, tall from navel gazers.
Okay, so there what we had was young from old, was a black from white, tall from navel gazers. Now, earlier in the speech, he talked about how he wound up in a wheelchair, and instead of being 6 foot tall, he was now a navel gazer. Okay, so that got a good laugh earlier. So that was a callback, but it was also a triad. young from old, black from white, tall from navel gazers. You have 3 examples that he's doing, and the navel gazers breaks the pattern. Okay, now let's look at the next one I have for you here. Come back down. And this one is Jim Key. Now, this isn't Jim Key's. You may not know this. You may know it. Jim took second in the World Championship 2 years in a row before he finally won it in his 3rd competition. This is his 2nd speech where he took 2nd place. But he uses a very simple triad to get a laugh right in the beginning of his speech. And he's talking about his kids, how he wants to help his kids.
My dream is to inspire my children so they will become productive citizens and move out of my house.
Okay, now the simplicity is on this one. He wants to inspire his children so they become productive citizens. Now, that is all about ingratiating and making great children, and all the attention is on the children. So they'll move out of my house, which is now quite honestly, a self-interest, or we could say a selfish interest. So he wants to do this so he benefits from it, because in the beginning he's trying to do this so his children benefit, and in the end he's trying to do it so he benefits, and that's where the thing flips. Classic use of a triad, very simple. 1, 2, C, or AB3. I don't care how you do it. The first 2 set the pattern. The 3rd one breaks the pattern. Now let's look at one more here. And like I said, this next one is one of my favorite world champion speeches. I mean, I love all the world champion speeches, but there we go. Okay. This is Brett Rutledge, and Brett was the 1998 winner. And he's talking about daydreaming in school. Okay, so let's listen to what he says.
My nemesis, Darth Vader. When I left you, I was but the student. Now I am the master. Only a master of evil, Darth. Really? Tell me this then. What is the square root of 25?
Okay, so that was Brett. So we have the triad set up. He's in this fantasy in his mind, daydreaming about fighting Darth Vader. When I left you, you were a master of evil. Yes. Or when I left you, I was a student. Now I am the master. Okay. Yes. So master of evil, Darth. That's the second one. So it sets up the scene. What's the square root of 25? It's his teacher talking to him in the classroom. It breaks the pattern. Okay. So this isn't necessarily, you can see how clever you can get with the triad. It's not just you have to say, I walked in, I saw a chair, I saw a table, I saw a camel. You don't have to be that direct. You can be creative with the triad, but the idea here is you set a certain pattern, and then the 3rd point of the pattern breaks the pattern, is something that's unexpected. Again, humor is putting unexpected things into your speech, and it gives you an opportunity to set a pattern and then bring something in that is unexpected, but quite honestly should also help make the point if you can make that. And I will just add another point. I may do a summary on humor here shortly, but I never try to put humor in a speech for humor's sake. To me, humor should always forward your message. It should do something to make the message more real to your audience. So as you're pulling things together, forward your message with your humor. Okay, so that's your tip for this week. Triads, another great way to put humor in speeches. By the time we're done, I'm hoping you've got a big bag full of ways that you can look at your speeches and figure out how you can continue to put, slide humor in where it is, the different techniques of putting humor in there. And quite honestly, I've never done a deep dive into humor like this before, and I'm learning a lot just watching speeches and seeing what people do, what works, and being able to sort of categorize these different component parts of humor. So thanks for listening to me, and I will see you next week. And go put some humor in your speech, and go put some humor in your life. Until next week.